Hi, it's Philippa here. Just before you listen to the episode, I want to let you know a couple of things. First of all, Jules, my guest today, is a therapist here in the UK. I know that the licensing and the way therapists work in other parts of the world are different. But I just wanted to let you know that in case anything Jules says seems strange or not quite the way it would be in your country. I don't actually have any specific things I'm thinking about, but I just thought it was worth saying that. The other thing is that Jules talks about her work with SARC, which is the Sexual Assault Referral Centre. She just mentions SARC, and she also talks about that there she works with women who've experienced sexual assault. We don't talk in detail about anything that she has worked with those women, but I wanted to let you know now so you can decide if this is perhaps not a good episode for you to listen to. Most of the episode is about teenagers, and if you find talk of teenagers triggering, please don't listen. And I'm kind of joking there, because who isn't triggered by their teenagers? I know I certainly am. But on a very serious note, if even the mention of working in a sexual assault centre is not good for you today, please take care of yourself and don't listen to this episode. Okay, and now on with my chat with Jules. Hi, and welcome back to the HSP Connection. I'm Philippa Robinson. This is where we share stories, insights, and strategies to help fellow highly sensitive people navigate their own path to living a fulfilling and meaningful life. We're on a mission to reclaim the word sensitive and help the world see the strength in sensitivity. Today, anybody watching on YouTube will see it's just me, as in just me and not Robbie. But I do have with me, once again, my wonderful friend Jules, who came to talk to us in episode 30 about grief and her experience of grief personally, and, you know, from her work experience as a therapist. And she's back again today, I'm really pleased to say. We've got loads of topics that we want to talk about over the next year. But today, we're going to talk about Jules's work with teenagers and young people, because personally, I'm really interested in that. I've got 2 teenagers, and I know a lot of you out there listening will have teenagers, young people in your life. So I thought this was a really great conversation to have. Jules agreed to have it with me, and that's amazing. So Jules, hi, welcome back to the podcast.
Hello, good to see you. Good to be back.
Yeah, it is. It's really good to have you back. And today, we're going to talk about teenagers and young people in our lives. You've got 2, I've got 2. You know, you work with a lot of them and have done. I know you're not working with them quite so much now, and we'll come on to that in a moment, what you are doing, but you have a lot of experience that you can share with us. And I'm really grateful to you coming to do this. So where should we start? I think if I will ask my first question and we'll see where we go. Okay. So my question that I'd like to start off with is, you have worked with teenagers and young people, and let's just say teenagers from now on, but we mean teenagers and young people.
Yes.
In various settings. And, you know, maybe you can sort of, the answer to this question will probably mean that you tell us about some of those settings. But what I'm really interested in is, what are some of the themes that, you know, have come up really while you've been working with teenagers? Because I know that, you know, we've had a few things go on in this house already, and it's really easy for me to think it's just me, that it's just us that is going through these. So I would really love it if you could just give us a little bit of an idea of the sort of things that the teenagers bring to you.
Yeah, okay. I made a list, and I might think of other things while I look at my list. But anxiety and low mood or depression is pretty high. Disordered eating,
Yeah.
I worked in a college, so there was quite a lot of academic stress, students' own expectations and parental expectations, parents separating and blending families and the difficulties that can bring, bullying issues, friendship issues, identity, including sexuality, gender identity, bereavement and loss, and family issues within the relationships within the family, phobias, OCD, and I also work in the sexual assault service in Cardiff. So I'm part of the, if they've been through the court system or not, I'm part of the aftercare system there. So if they've been sexually abused, I'm the counsellor there also.
Yeah. Wow. Bet that's tough, and we'll come on to that later. That's a lot. That's a lot of wide-ranging issues. And there's a couple of things that strike me about that.
Yeah.
One is that those are issues that you could have read out if you were working with adults.
Yes.
So, because I think it's really easy to think of teenagers and young people as like different, but I know they're not adults, but they're just people, aren't they?
Yeah, human beings.
And really, we all go through a wide range of feelings, emotions, anxiety about things in our life. So actually, a lot of what our teenagers are feeling, we're gonna recognize, really, if we can see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully it's about introducing, normalizing those feelings, and helping with coping strategies that will help them throughout their lives into adulthood.
Yeah. So it strikes me that the young people that you have worked with in the past are obviously, I mean, if all this probably all sounds a bit obvious, but they're the adults of the future, aren't they? So they are going to present. They might present in a slightly different way, but the underlying feeling is a lot of what we as adults would understand, because we have those feelings when in our adulthood. Whether we've addressed them and how we deal with them is a different thing altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. And the value of early intervention, which is what brought me to work with children and teenagers in the first place, is so important. So and they can work. Sometimes I find young people work more quickly than adults, or not. It depends what the issue is, but
it's interesting, isn't it? So I mean, and as you say, I think we know more now, don't we? We know better. We know how, if these things aren't resolved and aren't treated, what they can turn into.
Yes.
Yeah. The other thing that struck me when you read through that list, for me, it seems quite obvious that nearly all of those things that you read out are all to do with self, or will have an impact on self.
Yes, absolutely. A huge impact.
And how they see themselves, how they feel about themselves,
and how they place themselves, and what does this mean to them being in the outside world?
Yes. Yeah. So if that is needing attention in their teenage years, it is just really important that it gets some space.
Yes. And psychoeducation, if the young person is up for it, some information about what's happening in their brains, what's happening in their brains right now when they're completely rewiring the frontal lobes, and reasons why they can feel the way they do, and the importance of sleep and all kinds of things.
The importance of sleep, that's a real big one in this house, my teenagers, no, I can stay up a lot later, but you can't get out of bed in the morning.
I guess it's learning to value sleep, isn't it?
Yes, you're right. So when So rather than pick out individual topics, I think because of that sort of, I suppose, common theme that I think I can see running through there, really, that it is all about self. At a time when hormones are raging and their brain is rewiring, and they're working out, they're realizing the next step is coming.
Yes.
The turning 18, the going out into the world, whatever that is going to look like for them. But it's definitely a major development stage, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it can be overwhelming.
Yes.
So what I try and do firstly is just to provide a safe space, excuse me, for them to explore those feelings.
Yeah.
And it takes time for the relationship to develop between us. You can't rush that. So making them aware that it's going to take time for me to get to know you and you to get to know me and to feel comfortable with each other. And then, just being patient, I guess, and normalizing that as well.
So normalizing what they're feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also that it can take time.
Yes.
For the work, for them to feel comfortable with me, for the work to start to be, therapeutic.
Yeah.
So it takes time.
So do you get some that don't stay?
Yeah, I do. I'm not the therapist for everyone. Some young males I sometimes find it difficult to talk about their feelings to me.
Yeah.
And that's probably my trickiest client group, personally. So, when I used to work privately with teenagers, we'd have a couple of short sessions to see whether, how they felt about me and whether they felt they could open up and connect. So that was quite useful. So, yeah. I'm not the therapist for everyone, and I can refer on to other therapists.
Yeah, and also some of them are not ready as well, aren't they? Some of them.
Timing is hugely important. Yes. Timing is so important. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know I've suggested to at least one of my children or young teenagers, young people, that they might like to talk to somebody else, and they are absolutely adamant that they won't. Yeah. So there's no point, because I know that they might appear, they might turn up where they're supposed to turn up, but they won't say anything. So there's no, I mean, and why would I force them?
No, absolutely. And, I have worked with young people whose parents are so desperate for them to engage.
Yeah.
That they turn up and I say, do you want to be here? And they say, not really. My parents want me to be here. And it just doesn't work. But I can understand that parental concern and they just want to help, I understand that, but it's got to be the right time for the clients.
Yeah, it really does, doesn't it? And I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here. So if anybody's listening and they're in that sort of situation, so they're a parent, or I mean they might be the teenager, but so if they're a parent and they have a teenager that they would like to engage with somebody, if they don't, if the teenager can't engage with the parent, they would like them to engage with somebody else, but they are reluctant. Or I mean, actually, just stick on that one. Have you got any wise words that you could share with them just to help them feel a bit like they're perhaps doing something? Because I think that's how I would feel. A bit useless,
a bit lost.
A bit lost.
Keep trying to communicate if that's okay for the young person, and also the parents need the support sometimes while the young person's working through it. So Young Minds is a really good website I often recommend, and there's a section on there for parents as well. And also, they can send that if it's too much for the young person to talk to someone, maybe they can look at some literature or a website or a book or, other forms of information, or normalizing their feelings rather than speaking face to face to someone, something more manageable and accepting. Yeah.
That's great. And I loved what you said, actually, that the parents need support. So maybe if the young person will not engage with support, maybe actually the parents that is such a great reminder.
Yeah, they can have their own therapy, their own support until, or while they're going through this with their child or young adult.
Yeah. Great advice. And do you feel that more teenagers, young people are seeking therapy? Have you seen an increase?
Yeah, I do. I think there's more awareness from a younger age in schools, and also high profile cases in the news, which can trigger a lot. Certainly, I'm just thinking of my role in SARC, can trigger a lot of referrals. College, when I worked in a college, they knew that I was the college counsellor, and they could self-refer themselves, and that was normalised. And I've worked in primary schools as well, so quite from a young age, really. I think there's more awareness, and from professionals also who refer to me, who have referred to me via different organisations, agencies, charities.
What, referred young people to you?
Yes. Yeah. I also used to be a bereaved support worker for Cruise bereavement. Yeah, when I was training, they're a great organisation as well. And so, more awareness of the emotional needs, I think, now, and so much on social media for young people out there. So
there is a lot out there. I mean, gosh, if there'd been as much out there as there is now when I was younger, I don't know how much I would have engaged with it, but it's, I mean, I'll never know, but it would be interesting to see what would have happened by then. I think there's a huge amount, and so the discernment of knowing which bits to take advice from and which bits to actually, not touch with a barge pole is quite tricky, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And self-diagnosis, I have teenagers come to me and say, oh, I've got this, or I've got that, or I've got, looking for a label to kind of understand why they feel like that. But, it's about talking that through, and I'm not a clinician. I can't diagnose people. So that can be tricky sometimes.
And you mentioned labels there. Do you feel that young people that we're talking about today having a label, or having a way to, or something to call what they're feeling, do you find that helps them often or not?
Yes. Sometimes I do. I'm not sure about labels, to be honest. They can be helpful. I'm just thinking of young people in schools can get additional help if they do have a label, and that's really important.
Yeah.
Or get the help that they need. But for young people, just finding those words to help them describe how they're feeling.
Yes.
Can be useful.
So not a label to sort of go, right, you're this, you're in this box, and that's what that means, because even within, like, whatever label it is, there are so many individuals who will be having their own unique experience.
Yes.
It's not to restrict what their experience is going to be. It's to so if I can only liken it to me discovering I'm an HSP, which I discovered 2.5 years ago, what that has helped me do is have language to use to describe how I feel about things and what I need, and that has really helped me. And when my youngest was diagnosed with dyslexia 3 years ago, that was really great for him, because I didn't know, but the first thing he said to me was, when I told him that actually the result was he is dyslexic, his first response was, "Oh God, does that good?" He said, "Does that mean that I'm not stupid then?" So I didn't know that is what he had been feeling, because he hadn't vocalized that. So I mean, it has been interesting how that then plays out at school. You know, it's very much, this is what is available for dyslexic children. It's like, yeah, okay, but are you taking account of his particular form of dyslexia? And, you know, and so it's all been a bit of shambles, to be honest. But personally, from his point of view, it has been a very positive thing to understand that his struggle to learn and show what he's learned in the way that is the very narrow way that is expected of him at school. The reason he struggles with that is because he's not in that very narrow channel of young people who can learn and perform in that way.
Yes. And insight and understanding of why, very important.
Yeah, it is really important, isn't it? And I think
some schools are better than others.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
I hope they are. I hope they're not all a bit rubbish. But you know, we'll get there. It feels a little bit like for us that at the minute that school is like an endurance test, but we are kind of nearly there.
And that can be the way for a lot of young people.
Yeah. And I think that needs normalizing as well.
It does. School can be really tough and not for everyone.
No. And I think a lot of the things that you talked about in the list at the beginning of things that young people present with often are centered around school. Like the parents' expectations, the bullying, the need to achieve, and all those things. And gosh, I mean, I'm not saying it was easier. I don't know whether it was easier because I'm not a teenager now, and it wasn't easy when I was a teenager, but it's very different. I keep saying to my kids, I don't know what it's like to be a teenager now. You know, so I need you to help me understand what your experience is like. Because my experience was completely different for all manner of reasons. So I think that's how I try and connect with my kids, by asking them.
That's a great thing to say to them. And they've got an online life and an offline life, and navigating what to share, what not to share, what to like, oh my goodness, I can't imagine how hard that must be. I was a particularly rebellious teenager, and for various reasons, and I didn't engage academically in school, but I had a great social life and great group of friends. So I really enjoyed school, but not for any academic reasons. But I do get, I have had clients who have just found school just too overwhelming and are doing homeschooling now, or found other ways of studying. And that doesn't have to be forever either. Things may change. They may find that they want to go to a college in years to come to do further training, and that might be the right fit for them then. So because I do think there is this sort of very narrow view of what teenage years are going to be like, and you're going to work hard at school and play hard, and you're going to come out with your exam results, and that is going to dictate where the rest of your life goes forever. And it's like so much pressure. A lot of pressure, isn't it?
It is. And could it just be one step at a time? And I mean, for me, the most important thing is that my boys both leave full-time education with a degree of self-confidence. That doesn't come from exam results. That's what I would wish for them. Obviously, their life will be a lot easier if they've got some exam results to take with them. But I think lots of exam results, no self-confidence is tricky.
It's tricky. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm wondering, so, you know, I'm an HSP, you know, I'm an HSP, and I think you said to me that you discovered about highly sensitive people through me or via me. Is that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I did.
And I wonder if you, I suppose, you know, you're not working with young people. You've not worked with young people since you found out about that. But I just wondered, looking back, do
I
you
am
think?
in SARC, just not
of course you are.
privately. Yes.
Sorry, of course you are.
Yeah.
So do you think that maybe, and this is a massive generalization and you're not going to know, but do you think that maybe young people who are highly sensitive might find those years trickier?
Yeah, perhaps, particularly if things aren't going right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And or something happens.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And things going right is great, but things not going right is what builds resilience and builds, you know, not recovering, but, you know, failing and doing it again and doing things and finding the right, not the right way, but finding the path that works is actually really quite important.
It is.
But it's actually at that stage where you're just working out who you are and what the world is about and working out who you are in the world.
Yeah, and that it's okay. I was telling a young person this week, it's okay to fail, but it's scary, isn't it? You know, it might be the first time.
Yes.
Really scary.
Yeah. I remember my first epic fail because I was the absolute people pleaser and good girl when I was at school. I worked really hard at school because that was my safe place and you know, got some good results and went to university and, you know, but I got into university, but I failed my first year. That was my first epic fail. And I had to, luckily I didn't have to repeat the year because they allowed me to take the exams again just before the start of the second year. And I passed them and got back in. But that was my first epic fail. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can't just glide through everything and sort of get there.
You learned.
I did. Well, I did. What I probably should have done is realize maybe law wasn't for me. But anyway, no.
You learned that later.
I did. Well, I did. Well, and actually, I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't stuck with that. And where I am now is absolutely great. So, you know.
Yeah.
And there's no point dwelling on what else could have been. But yeah, I do think we don't know enough about high sensitivity, and I think there are a lot of highly sensitive kids out there who, you know, are not presenting with other things that perhaps we know more about. But are still in that, they're still struggling.
Absolutely. So it's about, for me, I guess it's about recognizing that more with my clients and normalizing those feelings.
I'm just curious, do you think your work has helped you with your own teenagers?
No. Absolutely not.
Too close.
Yeah, too close. I'm with my own teenagers, I'm inconsistent, too soft, and too emotionally connected. You know, that umbilical cord, that invisible umbilical cord is ever present. And no, I don't think. And sometimes it can be more frustrating because I know what they need to do, or I know what would be helpful.
And
they're completely resistant to all of it. And that's really frustrating.
I can only imagine how frustrating that is.
But I've got to accept that they are their own human beings on their own path, and they will get where they are meant to be in the end.
For them as well.
For them,
yeah.
Yes. My expectations are my expectations, not necessarily theirs. My parents were pretty laid back with me, and I know it was different times, but I think that's my approach is quite similar. And my friends certainly say, oh yeah, I can see the way you parent your kids is the way that I remember your parents with you.
Right. What a great testament to your parents then.
Yeah, I don't know if it was always right or not, or, I just try my best one day at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's all any of us can do, isn't it? And I meant a great testament because I think we either repeat the way we were brought up or we go completely the opposite. So you've sort of repeated yours and I've gone completely the opposite.
Sean's experience is completely the opposite as well of the way he was brought up.
So it is. And how we are brought up, I mean, it's all connected, it all, I mean, what I've done is actually go completely the opposite way and been like, so polar, like, miles, I can't even think of the words, but actually what I'm having to do now I've got teenagers who kind of walk all over me if I let them. I'm having to pull it back. So, because I was really, really nice, dreadful word, but very, I don't know, I've probably spoiled them. Accepting. And I've probably not necessarily spoiled them materially, although there's probably been a little bit of that, but much more in my patience and tolerance, acceptance of what. And I think that is interesting, actually, because I say that perhaps I was too tolerant. I think they do have an idea of self, because they're very, very different. I mean, I naively thought two boys, 2 years apart, same parents, how different can they be? Very, very different is the answer. And they are very different. And they're very, I mean, the insults they trade about their own differences, I mean, fill me with horror sometimes, but they are very aware, I think, of who they are.
Brilliant.
I think they are. Yeah. I mean, I obviously want them to be, so I'm looking for signs. I'm looking for, positive bias sort of to confirm what I think. But I do think there is an element of that. So
good.
Yeah. But we can only do what we can do. We can only
That's right. We can.
Our best, isn't it?
Yes.
And so you've already. I mean, I love what you said about normalizing. When I said what advice can you give, and a lot of it is, I suppose, be there if they want to talk. Try and make the time. Not always easy.
Away from the house, sometimes in a neutral place. At car journeys, I often find are pretty good. No eye contact, a bit less. You're both trapped.
Yes.
Less intense than sitting opposite each other or so sometimes a car journey, a quick 2 minutes, and you might just get 2 minutes of that connection or valuable conversation or information that you wanted to know about them, or just to ask them to sharing, I guess, for them to give you a glimpse into their world. But I'm always aware that the role of a teenager is to become independent, isn't it? Separate from their parents.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's okay. And the role of a parent, I guess, is to I believe healthy boundaries that can make teenagers feel safe, and the role of a teenager sometimes is to kick those boundaries back down, and we can still keep putting them back up, not easy for both parties. Not easy.
It isn't, is it? And I think one of the hardest things which I haven't had to do too much of yet, but I know from other, because I've got quite a lot of friends who've got older kids as well.
Yeah.
And they say is watching them go down a path that you feel is the wrong one for them,
Yes.
or is doomed or whatever, but you've got to let them do it.
Try.
And it's like, oh my goodness.
Very difficult. Very, very difficult. So again, you know, it's quite often the parents that need the support.
Yes.
Talking to other parents, or personal therapy, or coaching, or self-care, so important.
Yes. Yeah.
And you're modeling self-care for your teenagers as well, because maybe one day they'll be parents. So self-care is so important. A bit of space between you and the young person is good. Healthy.
And actually what just came up for me then instantly, which I hadn't thought about, is that I suppose, so I mean, I've already said, I was like, you know, I was the good girl. I did not have rebellious teenage years at all. And I think if I hadn't done the work that I'd done, I would be having a massive reaction to my more rebellious teenagers now, because I would I'm a little bit like, you don't know how lucky you are. They don't know how lucky they are. And that's fine, because how would they? So not that, you know, I don't say that very, I might have said it a few times, but I certainly don't say it a lot. But I think my inner landscape would be very like, oh God, you know, I towed the line. I did this, I did that. And look at them thinking they can behave like that. And I think it would probably activate my inner rebellious teenager that didn't get a chance to rebel. So I do think every step of being a parent, every development stage brings out something in us parents.
Absolutely, yeah. And my rebellious teenager is still alive and kicking.
Good, I'm glad to. I am so glad to hear that.
And you know, I have to really be mindful when she is triggered to try and remain in adult mode, you know, and then you know, I can give her a voice separately afterwards. Oh it's really difficult, and I don't beat myself up about that rebellious teenager being triggered within me as well sometimes. You know, that I'm human.
And also, I mean, being a rebellious teenager is quite fun.
But it was a wonderful. We had a great time. I was with a bunch of other rebellious teenagers who are still, you know, my best mates now.
Amazing.
Rocky road sometimes, but good fun,
and and it's all connected, isn't it? And you know, yes, we're talking about teenagers, but we're also talking about parents as much as we're talking about teenagers, and we're also talking about your role as a therapist in this. And I know you have lots of friends who are therapists and counselors, and you know, you've mentioned self-care as well, and it feels like it's bringing it all together, because I know that, you know, compassion fatigue is a thing for me in my everyday life. But you know, given what's going on around the world and lots of shit that gets thrown at us left, right, and centre. But for you, you know, spending a lot of time with other people, human beings who are looking to you for your support through their tough times. I mean, that is, you know, you really need to look after yourselves. You really need to look after, you know, your self-care needs to be ramped right up, doesn't it?
Yes, it really does. Can be so challenging, but so rewarding as well. I've become more aware of that need for self-care, been working in SARC and going into my 8th year. I don't think when I started I realised the impact of the work or valued it as much as I should. And over the years I have really taken it on board. And I only work there part-time, limited hours. I'm a great team. So my peers are very supportive. brilliant supervision, good manager, good team around me, because the work can be particularly heavy. And so the importance for me is sleep, good sleep, and exercise. So walking the dogs, swimming. If I can commit to an exercise class, I will. Yeah, Pilates, talking to friends, socialising, eating well. So it's just all about balance, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
And sometimes I don't get that balance perfectly right, but I strive to. But yeah, it can be it can be tiring sometimes. So really valuing an early night.
Yeah, I'm sure. And that compassion fatigue that I just mentioned, is a real thing. I mean, it's the state. Well, I don't know. I mean, whether it's a stage before burnout, but it's definitely a precursor to full blown burnout, isn't it? If it's not sort of taken seriously.
When I was grieving, I think I had over 2 months off work, I think, because there was no capacity for any work, and just had to heal myself and look after myself. And because I enjoy the role so much and I really value the work, I'm aware that if I want for longevity in this role, I have to look after myself. So I strive to find that balance.
Yeah,
sometimes easier, not so easy, but it's a constant, awareness.
Yeah, and that goes right back to where we started, where I mentioned about self. You have to look after yourself.
Yes,
because you need to bring your best self that you can into the therapy role, whether it's online, whether it's in the room, because if you're not you're not in the best shape that you can be, and like you said, when you were grieving, you actually didn't work for a while because there wasn't capacity for anything else.
No. And being a HSP and going into that room, you're picking up on so much more. It's a physical,
it is.
You're picking up on everything. Like you said at the beginning, you can sense all these things, your spidey sense, we call it in work, goes up. And so that has an impact on you.
So that's made me smile, really, because I haven't said to you about, I know I'm an HSP, but that's the first time I've heard you say that you're an HSP.
Yeah.
We've always had a connection. So we're part of a bigger friendship group that I met your partner at university, and we've all stayed in touch. But when we all go away, you and I always have had a connection, and we'll have deep, meaningful conversations.
Yes.
But do you now believe that you're an HSP?
Yes, and I'm looking back at my childhood also. Definitely.
Oh.
But I wonder if it was developed because I had quite a turbulent childhood, or was I just born that way? I don't know. I haven't worked that out.
Well, all the research says that the trait is innate, so it is in us. Because I think there are some people who talk about it being as a result of trauma. I don't believe. I don't believe that, and I've not read any, and I've read research to the contrary. I do think if we are HSPs, we have a deeper experience of the trauma.
Yes,
because. Yes, the trauma is happening, of course it is, and it is traumatic in its own right. And we are feeling it really deeply, and we are processing it really deeply. So I feel that actually that's why we and maybe we don't know. And that's where it comes from, that some people talk about it being highly sensitive is as a result of trauma. I actually don't believe that. But I do think it makes it a deeper experience. And the flip side of that is, yes, we feel it deeper, and we probably experience the trauma perhaps deeper than maybe our siblings do. If we've we will all have had our own experience
Yes.
in whatever happened. But actually we can feel and process the healing deeper as well. So we can really feel the trauma, but we can also really feel the healing. And I feel that's what I've experienced when I finally, in my 50s, was like, right, okay, I've got to deal with this. And then I discovered I was highly sensitive. I feel I've just like gone, oh yeah, processed it all and thought, oh, wow, you know, and it's made such a massive difference to me.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I've always said, you know, oh, I'm terrible with grief. You know, I really go into it and, oh, you know, I'm just really bad with grief. Now I'm thinking, well, maybe that's why.
She's just feeling it really deeply. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's good to know you can heal really deeply as well.
Yeah. Well, I feel that when you came on to talk about grief, you know, you told us about being in those feelings and staying in those feelings and not wanting to push them away.
Yes.
And yes, of course, you know, you are still on your healing journey around, you know, the death of your father. And you are healing.
Yes.
I don't know.
Interesting.
It is, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming and having this chat. That's a bit of a revelation to me. And I you know, I love that. I love talking about high sensitivity. I just think it's like a superpower. And there is so much strength in it. I mean, superpower is a bit overused these days. But there is so much strength in it. And you are really clearly demonstrating to us how you use your high sensitivity to do this really important work with the people that you do. And also, you shared with me just before we started recording, you said you'd been talking about high sensitivity. You didn't actually tell me then that you thought you were highly sensitive, but you've been discussing it with some of your colleagues and some of your friends, maybe, and that they think actually that a lot of therapists, counsellors are highly sensitive. And I think that's right, because we are drawn to caring professions. We are drawn to connection. We're really good at it.
Yeah.
So I'm not putting me with you. I'm just saying, as HSPs generally, it's a really great profession for HSPs, as long as you look after yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming, having this conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Me too.
Yeah. Is there anything I've not asked you, or that you really wanted to say and that you haven't had an opportunity?
Not that I can think of. The one thing that I was also thinking as a HSP is sometimes I want to turn it off.
Yeah.
I want to don't want to go into a room and read a room or forget those feelings. And that can be, I want to break.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And that is a real other side of it. And I don't think you can turn it off, but you can, in time, I think, learn that, right, that's happening and I don't want that. Now, maybe that means you leave the room. Maybe it means that you take a little break, go to the, go to the bathroom and just take a couple of breaths and center yourself and come back. Or, some people talk about, that they will have a protection around them. They will, they'll have an energetic, they will create an energetic sort of bubble around them.
Yes,
so that it can't come in. And a lot of that also depends on where you are on the sensitivity scale. And within all the elements of being highly sensitive, we will all be in a different place on the scale. So Robbie, who I record this podcast with, she feels other people's feelings. So she's right on the top of the empathy scale. Now, all HSPs can really demonstrate empathy, really feel it. We are empathic, but some are like way up the scale. And Robbie's one of those. I'm not.
Yeah.
So you might be.
I don't think I am.
Okay. So then it might just be an intentional, okay, I don't want to feel this today. And you have to work out a way that's going to work.
Doing that.
For you. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, it's all a load. And it just gives us the language, like I said right at the beginning, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It just gives us a way of talking to others about it, and we can work out what other people do
Yeah,
and how it shows up for them, because we're all different.
Yes, yeah. Giving
Brilliant.
us the language. Thank you.
It is. Thanks so much for coming. And you are going to come back. We've already talked about 2 other potential topics that we can talk about. So this will go out before Christmas 2023. So we'll make some arrangements and have you back in 2024 if you're up for that.
Great. Absolutely. Thanks,
Amazing.
Philippa.
Thank you so much, Jules.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to HSP Connection. If you've enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. Also, we'd really appreciate it if you could rate the podcast and share it with anyone you think might be interested. It helps others find us. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can also leave us a review.
To get in touch with us, you can email us at hspconnectionpodcast@gmail.com. And we'd love to hear from you with your thoughts and comments on the episodes and any suggestions you have for future topics and guests.
We are both HSP coaches and speakers. And to find out more about Robbie, go to Robbie Lee, that's leigh.com.
And to find out more about Philippa, go to safeandsupported.co.uk. See you next time.